All right. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Greg here, and the long-awaited day is finally here because in my possession is the iPhone 13 Pro. I got it in the Sierra blue color. You can see that you get a nice black box. Really excited for this phone because I have just been poring over like all of these details about cinematic footage. That's one of the new features with the iPhone 13 Pro, and just some of the camera improvements with the macro modes and stuff like that. So I am super excited to just unbox this thing and get right to testing. So what are we waiting for? Let's go ahead and open up this box. So here we have the iPhone 13 Pro. You can see that this is the Sierra blue color. And you can see that even on the box here, we can see that big camera module already, which is one of the bigger upgrades with the Pro series this year. And you can also see on the back that Apple has this new packaging, no shrink wrap or anything like that. And it's just kind of like two pull tabs right here at the bottom. So what are we waiting for? Let's open this up. Once that's done, flip it over, pull this up. And what do we got here? The iPhone 13 Pro. First time seeing the Sierra blue color in person. Looks pretty nice. Obviously, there's some other stuff in the box. Not much anymore, actually, because you just have a USB-C to Lightning cable. And you have your little pamphlet here, which I'm sure is going to have a SIM ejector tool, some documentation, and of course, you know it, you love it. Every time you buy a nice Apple product, you get that fancy, schmangled Apple sticker. But that is pretty much it for the unboxing experience. So why don't we just throw this over to the side, get back to the main attraction here, and peel that off. Let's look at the blue one last time before we turn this on and set it up. And let me actually grab I brought over for comparison, my iPhone 12 Pro. Oh yeah, that camera module is definitely bigger, definitely more noticeable than last year's on the 12 Pro. You can see side by side. Yeah, so you're getting a bigger camera module on this. I believe the thickness of the phone itself is a little bit increased as well, but nothing crazy. I don't really notice it. And it's a little bit heavier this year too, but in the hand, not really noticing the weight difference too much, so that's a good sign. But anyway, let's go ahead and turn this on. Let me set it up, and then let me come back to you with my initial impressions. All right, and I didn't lie to you. I am back here again at the desk. I've been spending probably, a few hours with the iPhone 13 Pro. And I have a lot of thoughts on it, actually, just from an initial impression thing. So I'm going to talk about the cameras more towards the end of this video because that's probably most of my impressions with this device, and that's where most of the changes honestly happened. But let's talk about some other stuff first. So I think one of the biggest features for most people going into the iPhone 13 Pro series was the faster 120 Hz display. And let me tell you, it is noticeable, right? So when you're when you're scrolling around, or when you're moving between the home pages, as you're looking at animations, as you're scrolling through web pages or Twitter, anything like that, you're going to notice just how much smoother this phone is compared to any of the other iPhones, because they've all refreshed at 60 Hertz. But what I will say is that I still don't think this is a must-have feature. Like, I notice it, I think it's nice. I've been using a ProMotion display on my iPad, since like 2017? So the fact that the 13 Pro series now has it is really nice, but I gotta be honest with you, I don't think this is a must-have feature. I can appreciate it for sure sometimes, but does it really change the way I use my iPhone? No, it's a flat out no for me. So it's a nice feature to have. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to have it. I think having it is better than not having it. But if you got like an iPhone 12 Pro last year and you're like, oh my God, I gotta run out and buy this again just to get the faster refresh rate, I think you can wait at least another year and go for that phone, because I don't think it's a must-have feature. But one of the things that actually does interest me more than just the faster 120 Hertz refresh rate is how Apple handles this. So again, this is a ProMotion display, very much like the iPad Pro, and it does something very similar, and that is that it ramps down the refresh rate when you're not using it. So when you're scrolling, you're getting that full 120 Hertz buttery smooth scrolling. But as soon as you stop, or as you look at an image, Apple can then lower that all the way down to 10 Hertz. And what that basically means is that the screen is getting refreshed 10 times every second, as opposed to 60 times every second on the normal iPhone 13, or 120 times a second if you have the 120 hertz as you're scrolling or looking at animations. And what that means is, like, say you're reading a book, or say you're looking at an image or a web page, that means that Apple can conserve battery life. And based on some of the battery tests we've already seen carried out on this phone, the 13 Pro, and especially the 13 Pro Max, have like the best battery life ever in an iPhone, and it's even beating out the regular 13 series for the same 6.1-inch sized phone. So I really think that has to do with the efficiency of the ProMotion display, and that's leading to longer battery life. And I think that's actually the best feature of that ProMotion display, is how much efficiency it gives us. I'll also say I did a bunch of test footage outside, which we're gonna get to shortly, and one of the new things with this display is it's actually brighter than last year's model. So I believe last year's model capped out at 800 nits of full screen brightness, at least when you're using it, and this year's model increases that by 200. So you actually get 1,000 nits of full screen brightness, and I was in like direct sunlight, and this is the clearest my iPhone has ever been out in the sun. I really appreciated that on the Pro model. So I think that's actually definitely a reason to upgrade to the Pros, is because you're actually getting a brighter display. Design-wise, I think another thing people are gonna notice is that, hey, there's a smaller notch. People have been asking for a smaller notch since the iPhone 10, and I gotta say, it doesn't make any difference to me. Like, you're not using the space up here. It's time, it's Wi-Fi, it's your cellular connection, it's the battery life. You don't even get a battery percentage now that the notch has shrunk. So the fact that it has shrunk is completely pointless to me. This was already useless screen area from my perspective. I already didn't notice the notch. I'm not gonna say I'm not a fan, I'm just indifferent, okay? It doesn't make a difference to me. And I've always said that since the beginning of the iPhone 10, where I actually got a lot of hate for saying, I think the notch is fine. It's fine. This is fine. Are you fine? Good. So covered all that stuff. I'm sure there's a lot more to cover, but we're gonna have to wait for a full review on that. But what I can talk about real quick is my first impressions with this camera system. And there's a lot to cover here, but let me try and make it as concise as possible. So right now you get a wide angle lens, an ultra wide angle lens, and a telephoto lens. Now, what's different on this year's model is basically all of those lenses have been improved in some way. So the wide angle has a faster aperture, the ultra wide has a faster aperture, the zoom lens now goes up to 3 times zoom rather than the 2.5 times zoom on the 12 Pro Max, and actually the 12 Pro from last year only had a 2x zoom. So one of the first tests I conducted was just taking a photo with every single focal length. So I took it from the ultra wide to the wide, to the 3x, and then I actually digitally zoomed all the way in, and now because you have a 3x lens, you can actually digitally zoom to 15x. And very quick impressions, I think the camera does very good. This was obviously in very bright sunlight, so these are not really challenging scenarios for the iPhone. I took a couple low light photos as well, but one thing I was really happy with was the extended zoom range. I noticed that instantly, and I was able to zoom in a little bit more than I was used to. Even if I had to like digitally zoom to 5x or 6x, I got a much more usable picture than when I was using the 2.5x or the 2x, and I had to, digitally zoom in a little bit more to get what I wanted to see. And I just think the clarity on the zoom lens, at least for my first impressions, seems sharper, more detailed than what I was used to on the older phones. But other than that, I took a couple other snapshots in different areas with the ultra wide, the wide, and the telephoto in indoor lighting. And yeah, again, quick impressions. I really got to go in and look at these on like my iMac on a big screen, but looking at them on the iPhone itself, I just think these photos look really good, and I'm very happy with the camera performance. But again, I wasn't necessarily upset with the camera performance on the 12 either. But one thing I will say for the ultra wide is that with that faster aperture, because it can let in more light, I found that the indoor photos looked a little bit better to my eyes, and it didn't have to kick off into night mode as frequently as it might have with the 12. Now, one other thing with that ultra wide is that you get a macro mode this year, and that's probably one of the bigger improvements to the camera system. So now you can get really close with the ultra wide, and actually the ultra wide actually autofocuses. That's why it's able to do macro. Before, the ultra wide cameras didn't autofocus, and you can get really close, get some really different perspective shots. They look nice and detailed, and it even works in video mode as well, which is what I'm more excited for instead of just for a photography standpoint. I would really like to just take this out sometimes, maybe get some, really close details of something I need, like a 10-second clip, and I think that is really, a very handy tool to have on you, always in your pocket. So a big fan of the macro so far. Now I hope I'm not missing much as I'm trying to go through these features here, but I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from watching the Apple event was this new video mode called cinematic mode. Now, what cinematic mode does is it tries to basically emulate what you would get on a bigger camera with a faster aperture. It's basically trying to give you background blur, and that's what they mean by cinematic mode. I don't know why I'm trying to get so technical here. Very similar to how portrait mode works. Just think of portrait mode, but this time for video. All right, and now we're outside, a rare sight for me. But we're testing the cinematic mode and I guess the iPhone 13 Pro's microphone array to see how this will actually look video quality wise as I play it back to you. Let me know, did it do a good job blurring the background behind me, or does it still need some work? We're in really, really direct sunlight, so this is gonna be an interesting test. A lot of stuff going on in the background as well. But hopefully it works well, because that would be a pretty awesome tool. Back to you at the newsroom. But I was expecting to, get close enough to the point where maybe I could use this sometimes in place of a bigger camera, and maybe I could get a different look that could incorporate some background blur to help me incorporate an effect into smartphones, or at least in the iPhone, that we just haven't seen yet. And I gotta say, my first impressions with cinematic mode are really good. Like, I read a couple reviews about cinematic mode beforehand, because I was actually really hyped about this feature, and a lot of the reviews were like, it's not that good, it's not gonna replace your Hollywood camera, and I think that totally misses the point, because it doesn't have to replace a Hollywood camera. I don't, as much as Apple loves to market it, I don't think, anyone's really expecting a bunch of Hollywood directors like Steven Spielberg to go out and buy an iPhone 13 Pro and then throw away like a big expensive camera. Like, that's not happening. Again, this is only limited to 1080p resolution, by the way, so that's definitely not happening. But the fact that you can now get these background blurs, as I'm showing in these examples, on an iPhone, even if sometimes they miss, even if they're not 100% perfect, is really impressive. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these cinematic test modes I've been showing you, and do you like them? All right, I'm walking, I'm talking, and this is actually cinematic mode from the front-facing camera. That's actually a feature that the front-facing camera mode has as well. It's a pretty good test because we're walking, we're doing like a vlog style kind of video, and yeah, so interested to see how this one works on the front-facing camera. Perhaps the best feature with the cinematic mode, though, is actually the ability to change your focus in post-production. So as you can see, I can go into the edit section on the phone, and you can actually play around with the focus point. So as you're looking at this pool table, I can actually change the focus point between my face, the balls, the window, anything, everything I can basically change, right? So I can change the focus point to anything. And that is something you cannot do on a traditional camera. That is all due to the power of computational photography. So that is really awesome. Let's say you messed up a shot, you didn't get the right thing in focus. Now you have the ability to go back and just change that. That is mind-blowing. So that was really cool to play around with for the first time. And for a Gen 1 kind of portrait video mode thing, I think it did a really good job. I'm really impressed with it. Even when it misses, like, I know it's not gonna be 100% perfect, but with most of the tests I did, I was mostly impressed with the feature, even though, to be fair, like, there are tests I did where it really didn't work that well. All right, I'm looking at the camera recording time. I'm gonna try and edit this down like crazy. I think I recorded more first impressions than I necessarily wanted to. But so far, iPhone 13 Pro, I'm pretty happy with it, with everything I've tested, but I still got a lot of tests to do, particularly in the battery life area, and also exploring these camera features more, and some of the power of the A15 chip. So there's a full review of this coming sometime And I want to actually maybe do an entire video shot on the iPhone 13. So if you want to see all of that content, make sure you stick around. If you like this video, even though it was long, I'm so sorry. Make sure you give this video a like, get subscribed, stick around for more. Got some more content coming up on the iPad, the 13 mini, a bunch of stuff. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone. I'm gonna unbox an iPhone in space.